yes.
So, Adam, rapacious seagulls.
Yeah.
What, I just love that word. It was the same when I found out the word mendacious, which was from some economist on Question Time. And there's a guy that I call Mendacious Mary because it annoys him. But rapacious, because I was mugged by, I know you talk about Seaside Time. There's one here on the West Coast called Ayr where I was mugged for a bag of chips from what I presume was a rapacious seagull. Could you give me a full meaning on that? Because I'm keen to work this into my day-to-day vocab.
I think I learned rapacious from The Simpsons.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's funny what goes in, but it's like...
I know, believe me. I had to.
I'll keep it clean.
Aggressive, like, sort of...
boisterous.
Aggressive, sort of forceful seagulls. And they're everywhere. They're like...
Oh, they're horrible.
When I was writing the book and writing this essay on seagulls, doing all this research, they're attacking people all over the country. They're stealing everyone's chips.
They're stealing everyone's chips, which is good for me because I've just signed a deal with Weight Watchers, but more of that later because this really is about you, Adam. No, I remember where I lived in Leith when my dog was a puppy. We had seagulls because obviously we were down at the shore and they used to go for her the whole time. It was really scary because they're vicious.
Yeah.
And they're referred to as sky rats, aren't they?
I know. I thought pigeons were rats with wings.
Oh, right. I thought seagulls
I think seagulls are worse. What seaside town is your book based in around?
It's most of it centres on the town of Withensea, which is on the East Yorkshire coast in an area called Holderness. And it's the fastest eroding part of Europe.
Wow.
Like 10 feet of it disappear every year. So probably in 100 years, that town just won't exist.
Wow.
And there's a whole history of towns along that coast just disappearing into the sea. It's a really strange place. And people kind of just live there and ignore it. Just like, it'll be fine. Someone will do something.
And is that associated with climate change or land erosion or something different?
It's accelerated by climate change, but it's been going on. There are like Roman records that refer to towns that have been lost along that coast. It's always been a problem. And people have always lived on there just thinking it'll be fine and it won't happen to them.
How does the coastal erosion infect the interdimensional wolves? Are they a seafaring wolf?
Yeah, see, this is... I think living on a strange little ignored, crumbling part of the country just allows strange ideas to flourish. There's something about being ignored. People can.
Are we feeling a bit needy, Adam?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think the reason I wrote a book about this town is because I wanted people to pay attention to it, and I thought it was full of massively interesting people, including UFO hunters, people that believe that there are werewolves leaping in through an interdimensional portal into this world, mutilating sheep and dolphins, and then just leaping back through this portal.
This is a bit like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but in a much smaller, eroding place. Do you still live there?
No, but my family all do. My mum, my sister, and my brothers there. Yeah, most of my family moved from the south to this town.
Why did they pick a town that
was eroding?
Yeah.
Well, my dad used to work for British Gas down in Suffolk, and he was told, right, you can take redundancy, or you can move to some other British Gas terminal. And my mum said, right, well, if I'm leaving my family, if I'm leaving my mum and dad behind, I want to live by the seaside. So Dad found the closest place to the seaside, which was on this coast. And they bought their house and were told, oh, yeah, it'll be 100 years before anything, there's any risk to the coast, from the coast to your house. And now the sea is the other side of the road from their house. It's oh
my God.
It's incredible. It's the rate that it's disappearing is terrifying.
But in some ways, maybe that makes me a bit weird. In some ways, that's terrifying, but in other ways, fascinating. Do you know what I mean? To just kind of see it literally inching towards you.
Yeah.
Why would you want to live under that level of jeopardy?
Because I like risk.
Well,
Yeah, I spoke to a lady, Angela, who lived on a chalet that was on the edge of a cliff. Like she liked living right on the lip of the cliff. And she said to me that she likes feeling that no one lives closer to the sea than she does. So her headboard was against the back wall, right against the eroding cliffs. And she could have just woken up on the beach one morning, and she liked that peril. Yeah. But she couldn't swim. She's like...
I mean, very unlikely really that she would wake up.
Yeah, it'd be just a quick... And it's the second of her chalets. She bought one, it fell in the sea, she just bought another one on the next bit of land.
Was she a lottery winner? Because, I mean, if she's able to buy chalets willy-nilly, I mean, good Lord.
The property isn't worth much in a town where it can just disappear very quickly.
Yes, it doesn't have a longevity to it, does it? I mean, in terms of even getting a mortgage, I would imagine that the mortgage brokers would not touch it with a barge pole if there's that level of imminent danger to it falling in the sea.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to buy anywhere because it doesn't... You don't get you do the sort of land checks and they just go, no, we're not going to give you a mortgage. This will be gone in 10 years.
So it's rich people who have disposable cash that are able to buy. That's my theory.
Rapacious rich people.
Rapacious rich people. I'm fascinated that this is your first book. How long have you had it in your head that you wanted to write something, or did it just come to you in a moment?
This has been in my head, God, I'd say decades.
Okay.
But I just thought, who would want to read about this town? Like, no one cares about it. I didn't know that it existed until I moved there. Mm-hmm. So there was this thing in my head. It's like, well, I could write this book, but why would anyone be interested? But there are universal stories. So most of my book is about my family, and there are themes that people can relate to from their own families. My family's quite odd in some ways, but I think everyone's is.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they've got an unusual family.
And I also think that everybody is naturally kind of nosy into other people's lives. I think we have this sort of human instinct of going, oh, what's going on over there? Let's have a little look. So yeah, I think you can pique people's interest quite easily.
Do you think that's to make you feel better about yourself?
I don't know.
Not you specifically, but I just mean people in general. You know, the fact that we are curious creatures. Like, I'm very nosy. And then I'll decide, depending, I don't know who's outside. It's like Fish Market Square out there. We've got rapacious hot deskers screaming. But no, I just mean in general that I remember speaking to a Scottish comedian, and
I hate that terminology.
It's awful, isn't it? Yeah. So she was a woman, and she always, and I have another friend who, when they turn up to do corporates, they'll see who's driving what, wearing what, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, really? Can you be bothered? Because that makes them feel better about themselves if they've got the best car or whatever. Whereas I suppose, because you deal with a lot of mental health stuff, which I have dealt with over the years, and I suppose I have taken comfort in looking at other people similarly afflicted and thinking, okay, I am aware of the level of my mental illness, if you see what I mean. You know, I know what time of day it is with myself. I'm not, although I'm, for want of a better word, nuts, I have a handle on it.
Well,
if that makes any sense. Well, I'm aware of it. Does that mean anything? Like,
I think reading other people's stories and people who have gone through similar stuff to you, I think you can find a comfort in it because you just go, okay, well, they've gone through some very weird stuff and they're still here. They found a way to push forward, and you can take something from that. You can be inspired to hold on, or to write your own book. There are a lot of people writing about mental health things. Yeah, it's always bring it back to the book.
But I think as well, I mean, it is that age-old saying that everybody has at least one book in them, and I think most people have that connection in that. I think have a secret desire to write a book. I'd love to write a book. Would you like to? I think you write a really good book.
Do you? I don't know.
I think everyone has definitely got a story in them, and it's just having the confidence to say, I am interesting enough for people to believe that people will read it.
Yeah.
And I think having that confidence is the biggest part of it.
And that's not always easy, because that's one of the things that we all suffer from, I think, is that kind of we're easily, our confidence can be dented, or we can second guess ourselves, or feel that, like you say, who would be interested? And so it's just getting over that hump of going, no, people will be interested. Or like you say, having the confidence to put pen to paper and go as far as getting it published. So, and we don't know yet. So it comes, is it the 4th of August? The book
4th of August, yeah. So
how nervous are you?
Oh, incredibly so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've had one review so far, and it was like, it was broadly incredibly good. I was like, okay, I'm really happy with this. And like all of the people who have read it have really liked it. But then it goes out in the world and you've got reviews and you've got Goodreads and Amazon, and all these people would go, it took too long to turn up in the post, and they give you 1 star. And so it's going to be out in public soon, and I have to feel that.
Well, that's when it's out of your control. And I think that's where the vulnerability comes, isn't it? As soon as you let go, you let go, and then it's at the mercy of others, for want of a better word.
But it's interesting what you say about having the confidence in which to put a book out there, because I think it's the same with anyone who's a performer, whether you're a musician, a comedian, an actor, to think that you're good enough in which to be taken seriously and critiqued. But what you have to remember, especially with these online things, that could just be drunk people leaving bad reviews, because I know I've done it with a local Chinese takeaway that I've never eaten in, but the woman was rude to me in the Lidl, and I thought, fuck you, bitch. So I complained to Just Eat about raw onions.
Well, this is it.
That's true, actually.
I believe you.
Dear.
But this is it. You don't know what propels people, what mood they're in. They're just hijinks or just being a bit of badness. Funnily enough, about the comedian thing, I think it was Johnny Vegas that said, because there is, in some ways, there's the confidence, but also the arrogance. I think it was Johnny Vegas that said, essentially, as a stand-up comedian, standing on stage with a microphone, you are essentially saying, I'm the funniest person in this room.
I often am.
But yeah, I think there is, I did a lot of spoken word before I wrote this book, and tried out these stories in front of people, read them out. And it's that, I know that feeling of going, okay, well, I want to make people laugh, and I want to make people feel things. And I had to have a bit of arrogance to get up and go, this deserves to be listened to. I'm going to read it out in a big voice, big loud voice over a mic, and you have to listen to it. And it can go badly. I've been thrown off stage before for inappropriate stories. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
I was at a literary festival, and I was booked to read a story, and I read the story I was booked to read, and they went, "Oh no, that's actually too rude." They spoke over me with a second mic and made me get off stage halfway through. I had to stand at the back and feel a little bit
like a naughty
ashamed.
child.
Yeah, they gave me an extra £5 there. So it wasn't all bad. And I bought pizza with it in Tesco and sat in the car park at Tesco, sadly eating it.
Oh, nice. I've been taken off stage for being drunk.
Yes. Hazard of the job.
Yeah, it's a badge of honour, I think.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, no, what had happened was I'd been at a fundraiser, a Waverley Care fundraiser, and I'd made love to the complimentary free wine, which wasn't free. I was just stealing from behind the bar in the Newtown bar until Jimmy came in and threw me out. And then I turned up to do a gig, and the owner of the club came backstage and went, "You're absolutely gutted drunk, and you're being replaced." And I wasn't allowed to go back on. Mm-hmm. But he did say, "There's your money, Bruce. See you tomorrow." Because he loves it.
As long as you get paid.
Yes.
Exactly, that's the thing. Are you doing a book tour?
I'm going to do the Edinburgh Book Festival.
Oh, nice.
And discussing some other sort of book events and doing signings and bookshops. I've got a launch in a bookshop in Manchester in September. Yes, I'm just trying to get as many of these events going and draw some attention to this book, because I realise I've got to sell a book about quite a niche.
Is it not a bit odd having a launch for a book a month after it is released?
A little bit. Apparently more people will be in town because it's Manchester. That's all the students will be back. It's like, okay, get as many people into this room as possible and make a noise.
But it's interesting with you saying what you discuss in the book, because you do focus on male suicide, don't you? Which is something that is still pretty much taboo and not talked about nearly enough.
Yeah. I mean, it was quite tricky because it was my older brother, and he's got 6 children. So I had to be very careful about how I spoke about him, and how I presume they're going to read this book at some point. Not all of them have seen my writing before, so they're going to get a perspective on their dad. So I had to be respectful there. I had to be respectful to my mum and my other siblings. I've got 3 other siblings, so it's something that needs to be treated very carefully, but it's really important to talk about it.
Absolutely. Sorry.
I was just about to say, did any of you watch the Will Young documentary? His brother, I believe, took his own life. And Will said something, he was on Lorraine, but it was Ranveer, because Lorraine was on holiday. Even though Lorraine's daughter's 27, she still gets the school holidays. And what he said was, because his brother had an addictive personality, and he said, I miss my brother, I don't miss the alcoholic. And I thought that's an incredibly candid and brave thing to say, because you're right. There are other people trying to make good of their life, sort of thing, which is very difficult. And the utmost care and respect when the people left behind would possibly, read this.
Yeah, and people are very complex. There are lots of different versions of the truth, and you've got to understand everyone else's perspective on what happened and why he died. And there are some members of my family who just think it was an accident. Others believe it was intentional, and it's such a tricky area to approach. But I think the more people open up about it and talk about their experiences, because again, it's like you read other people's stories, you learn from them and how they've handled things. And the more of that that's been spoken about, the better.
But it's exactly that, isn't it? Because there are so many different perspectives, but it's you telling the story, but it isn't just your story, so
I can only tell my truth.
It doesn't all belong to you, which is a hard thing to then put into the spoken word, do you know what I mean, or into the written word.
Yeah.
Oh, because I did a show about domestic violence, about my experience of domestic violence, but obviously that involved the fact that I had 3 children with that man. So then, in order to tell that story, it wasn't just my story to tell. And so I spoke to my children about it from their perspective and whether they were happy me to do it. Did you speak to your brother's children and your mum or about what you were going to say, and what was there anything they didn't want you to say? Was there anything that you felt you haven't put in the book that you wanted to?
There's definitely bits that I wrote in the first draft and then completely dialed back in subsequent drafts because I needed to consider other people. I've spoken to my parents, I've spoken to my sister, my brother, and a couple of my brother's kids, because he had children who were very young when it all happened, so they've got no real perspective on the actual sort of incident. But I had to involve them as much as I could, and their stories, their perspective, their feelings. It's actually talking about it now, which I realise what a complex thing task I set myself, because it could be so messy. But I feel like I found the right balance.
Yeah, because you can risk upsetting other people in the process.
Yeah. Because my challenge with this was I wanted to write a book that was entertaining, but was about some very challenging things, and to not undermine those challenging things by just making jokes. And it's that there's a sweet spot. Yeah.
And there are
found the sweet spot.
There are definitely jokes to be made over many things, over suicide, over domestic violence, over. Do you know what I mean, you do have to find the humor quite often.
It's funny that it's certainly where my brain goes, and a lot of people's brains go in those darkest moments. You run straight to the joke to escape the horror of what's going on.
Yeah.
Apparently, if you have a dark sense of humour, you're more prone to getting Alzheimer's. So good luck, everyone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that'll explain a lot.
So you've talked about the trials and tribulations of eventually getting this book out. Is there a second book in you?
I've already started writing it because this book won an award and then got a publishing deal off the back of that award.
Right.
But before that, I was sending it off to agents, and I think it was just, as I feared, considered a bit too niche. So because I wasn't getting a lot of positive feedback, I started angrily writing a second book, just thinking, oh, no one cares about this one, better write another one. And I started writing all these stories about just masculinity. So I've got a whole 3 or 4 stories already on the way for the next book that are about different aspects of not quite living up to the idea of what a man should be, because that's something I've spectacularly failed at a lot.
I hear you, sister. I mean, quite honestly. It's I don't know if you've watched, is it Veep with Julia whatever, and there was something about, could you man up, and she went, look, can I at least lady down, or something like that, because I think that whole man up thing is ridiculous. The one thing that I wanted to ask was, you talk about the book being niche or too niche for publishers. Do you think it's too earnest? Do you think it's too truthful as opposed to niche? Because I don't think suicide and various other things are niche. I just think we still have a great amount of uncomfortable attitudes towards discussing things.
Some people do not want to read about that. I know a couple of people that I showed the manuscript to early on. It mentions suicide in the first chapter because I wanted it to be something that the reader confronted immediately. And they were like, it's a bit, is this all going to be dark stuff? And it's not. There's lots of light and shade through the whole book. But it's interesting to see how much people step back from those kind of themes. And I guess that could be a bit of a turn off for someone who would want to publish it. But
I think
my publisher have been behind it.
I think people's sort of that immediate sense of self-preservation is what people do. And then, get over themselves. In terms of, you wrote the book, obviously, and having it published is a great achievement and something that's great. Do you, though, do you have other hopes? Because we all have ambitions for things. Do you want it to be made into a film, or is there anything else you would like to see done with it? Or are you just happy for it to be in
It's just we're both
read?
Actors as well, so we're always looking.
We're always looking for the movie
castings.
deal. Yeah.
Well, see, I think when I was putting these stories together, there were definitely some bits that I thought of as like, this particular story could be a TV series. That's definitely how I thought about it. And there's like there's a whole essay in there about my mum's burlesque career, and that felt like definitely a Sunday evening ITV series.
Yep.
So
kind of revisit details of the unexpected with all the jiggling.
Yeah. I think it was definitely unexpected when I got the call to say my mum had started doing that, and then ended up on Britain's Got Talent, and they had Lady Gaga's pyrotechnic people making them explode in bras. I think that translates to entertaining television.
Absolutely.
I think she also took a grinder to her hoo-ha.
Oh, my mum hasn't done that yet.
Well, I mean, there are always options, and I believe that B&Q still do their 10% off for pensioners on a Tuesday. So you would be able to. It sounds like a very, very varied read. So out on the 4th from all good book suppliers.
Yes, yeah.
Launched in September, but out on the 4th, launched in September, and then the movie deal, hopefully.
That'll quickly follow, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Coronation Street after hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got high hopes, I think.
And the book festival, did you say are you at the Edinburgh Book Festival?
Yeah, I'm at the Edinburgh Book Festival on August 17th.
Fabulous.
Lovely.
Adam, it's been an absolute joy over something that I don't think we're meant to have joy about, but
no, indeed. But I think you can always find, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I'm very much enjoying, is your hooded top ochre?
Yeah.
I just think that you wear the colour very well, so I'd like to see you in more ochre.
Most of my clothes are this colour. I've realised that I've landed on a good colour.
I mean, H&M, you can't go wrong. They wash well.
I think if you find a style, you stick to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Matalan.
Oh, really?
And I've got this, I think it goes well with this colour. I've got this thermos shirt that I got free from the Edinburgh Fringe a couple of years ago.
There you go. My goodness, you're recycling clothing. Jojo does that. Well, she steals from people's wives.
Ethically.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam. That was great.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
Hopefully we shall meet you in Edinburgh somewhere along some dark alley.
Yes, I look forward to fingering your publication very soon.
Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.